There is still hope in the world. Altruism and generous people do exist. Scientists from Jerusalem's Hebrew University recently published a research paper in which they claimed that there is a connection between generosity and genetics. According to them, people with an inclination to help others present a certain gene that influences such behavior. InfoLive TV met with the research team at their laboratory at the Herzog Psychiatric Hospital in Jerusalem and spoke with them about the project, the methodology, and its results.
We're interested in how genes affect people's behavior, but not necessarily abnormal behavior, but normal behavior. And one of the areas that we became interested in was generosity or altruism. And altruism itself is an interesting problem. Humans, I think most people would agree, on the whole, we're an altruistic species. So we're willing to help conspecifics, other members of our species, which is somewhat unusual in the animal world, although there are other animals that do that kind of behavior.
203 people participated in the research through an internet game which measured their level of altruism. The result of the game were compared with their genetic makeup.
And in that game, it's very simple. I give you a certain amount of money, say 50 shekels, and you can either keep all that money or you can give some of the money away and it'll go to some other, say, student at the university, but you don't know anything about the student. You don't know if he needs the money, doesn't need the money, you're never going to meet him. So if you tell people this game, most people would just assume that everybody's going to keep all the money. And that's what classical economics or in some sense, classical evolutionary theory predict, and kind of maximizing your profit. There's no reason to give anything away because you don't gain anything by that. It turns out that that's not the case. That in fact, not only in Israel, but in America and Europe and other countries where they've played that game, people give a certain amount away, and only maybe 20% of the people keep all the money for themselves. In the study that we did, we actually had a priori hypothesis. We had a notion which gene we should look at. So we didn't just pick randomly one of the 30,000 genes. As I said, we picked a gene which we thought might be related to this kind of generosity. And there are techniques today we could see in our laboratory that you can take DNA. The students do a mouthwash. They take some mouthwash and roll it around in their mouths. They spit it out. And from that mouthwash, we extract DNA. And then we can take a specific area of the DNA where we know that gene is, and we can amplify it. We can generate a lot more DNA of that specific gene. And we can measure, we have a machine that essentially measures the size of the DNA fragment that we've made. So we can group people on how long that particular area of the DNA is.
We were fortunate that it was really a multidisciplinary effort, and we had a lot of good help. We had Professor Epstein, who led the genetic element. Professor Gary Bornstein, who came from the behavioral economic perspective, and Ariel Knafo, Dr. Ariel Knafo, who has the psychology and the twin studies. On top of that, we had a lot of people help with the recruiting of the game. They did the genotyping, the DNA extraction. So there was really, and you could see in the article itself, we have something like 12 or 13 authors. In addition to that, there was a group that led by Professor Chaim Bellmaker and Galila Gam that provided brain pieces that we were able to look at the actual amount of mRNA that is produced, that's expressed in brain regions for the same gene. So it was really a multidisciplinary effort, and we were very fortunate in that perspective. On the game side, we had 203 participants. The important thing in a genetic experiment is to get a high enough number of subjects, especially with the gene that we picked, because there's a lot of different alleles, there's a lot of different variations for this specific gene. So we wanted to make sure that the subject size was large enough that we can detect statistically differences in behavior.
The question that immediately arises is what determines human behavior, genetics or the environment where the person grew up? The scientists explain their working approach.
We know that the genes only explain part of the reason we're altruistic or generous. So although we're as a species, to some extent, we're hardwired to be generous, the genes only explain 50% of the reason, the differences between people. And the other 50% comes from environment. So that might be the society, education, your parents, or your friends as you grow up.
This is not the gene for altruistic behavior. I think that would be a misnomer. We found a gene that when we get to things like cooperative behavior and altruism, is made up of it's a very complex trait. And in that respect, it's important to identify that there are many genes that contribute to this behavior, as well as many environmental aspects as well. So this is a head start, I think, going in the right direction, but it's not by no means the gene for altruism.
Professor Epstein and his team are working on another research project about the connection between genetics and anorexia that will allow them to know more about what causes the sickness. Altruism, egoism, human behavior continues to pose mysteries that have yet to be revealed.